The last thing Alara felt before the fall was not the mist on her face or the sturdy wood of the safety rail. It was her daughter-in-law's hand, a firm, deliberate press in the small of her back, a touch that held the weight of a secret about to be spilled. As she tumbled into the void, crashing into her brother-in-law, David, she thought that was the worst of it, the betrayal by the people they loved. But when they lay broken on the rocks below, playing dead, David whispered a truth that turned the mountain to ice. The man they'd come to this remote Scottish ridge to mourn, her husband of 30 years, was not only murdered, he was an imposter. And the children who pushed them had just inherited a legacy of lies worth killing for. Now, to survive the wilderness and their hunters, Alara and David must unravel the identity of the stranger she loved and confront a history so dark. The fall was just the beginning of their descent. The mist on the Ski and Doof Ridge didn't so much cling as penetrate, a fine, persistent drizzle that seeped through waterproof layers and settled in bones already weary from the climb. Alara McIntyre paused, one hand on a lichen-speckled boulder, the other pressed against the stitch in her side. At 62, her body protested these adventures with increasing frankness, though her mind sharp as the flint underfoot still craved them. All right back there. Liam's voice floated down from ahead, cheerful in a way that sounded forcibly bright, like polished brass over tarnished metal. Fine, Alara called back, not bothering to mask her breathlessness, just admiring the view. The view, when the shifting curtains of cloud permitted, was indeed savage and magnificent. The ridge fell away on either side into deep, shadowed corries where locks glimmered like shards of broken slate. It was a landscape that spoke of ancient violence, of glaciers carving despair into rock, fitting, she thought, for their purpose. Liam appeared through the mist, his face ruddy with exertion and something else, a tightness around his blue eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. Her son. The image of his father at that age, save for the mouth, which was all her, a hint of stubborn skepticism even in a smile. Not much further to the lip, he said, offering a hand she didn't take. Chloe's already scouting the best spot for, for the ashes. They didn't say it. The titanium cylinder in Liam's backpack seemed to grow heavier with every step, a cold, dense counterweight to the ethereal task of scattering. "Where's David?" Alara asked, peering back down the path. Lagging with his maps, Liam said, a flicker of impatience crossing his features. "Honestly, does he think he's going to discover New Glen up here?" "It's his way of coping," Alara said, though the words felt automatic. David's coping had always been intellectual, a retreat into facts and coordinates. Her brother-in-law was a dozen yards behind, crouched not over a map, but a patch of strange, dark moss growing in a fissure. At 65, he moved with the careful deliberation of a man used to handling fragile things. His glasses were speckled with mist. "Fascinating," David murmured as she approached. "Rachymetrium lanuginosum. Woolly fringed moss. It only grows in the cleanest air." A bioindicator. He looked up, his gray eyes magnified behind the lenses. Alistair would have known its Latin name instantly. He was the naturalist. I was the one with my nose in history books. There it was, the ghost they were all carrying. Alistair, David's older brother, Alara's husband, Liam's father, dead of a sudden, massive coronary a year ago to the day. A vigorous, healthy man fell between one heartbeat and the next. He'd have loved this misery, Alara said, managing a small smile. Proper Scottish weather for a proper Scottish send-off. David returned the smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He'd been even more withdrawn than usual on this trip, his gaze often distant, fixed on some internal horizon. Grief took people differently, Alara knew. Her own was a quiet, hollowed-out place, a room in her heart where the furniture had been rearranged and she kept bumping into absences. David's seemed more like a vigilance, a watching for something. "Come on, you too." Chloe's voice, light and musical, cut through the damp air. She appeared, a splash of cerise waterproof in the gray-green landscape, her auburn hair escaping its ponytail in damp curls. At 34, Liam's wife of 5 years still possessed the enthusiastic energy of a puppy, though recently Alara had noticed a new brittleness beneath it, a watchfulness that mirrored Liam's tension. The clouds are lifting at the lip. It's going to be perfect. The Core's lip was the reason for the arduous climb, a notorious viewpoint where the ridge narrowed to a spine of rock before flaring out into a dramatic, overhang platform. A safety rail, bolted into the living rock a generation ago, was the only concession to mortality. Beyond it, the world dropped away for 1,000 sheer feet into the cauldron of Quarnotcreage. They gathered at the rail, the 4 of them. The mist was indeed thinning, shredding itself on the jagged peaks across the chasm. Sunlight broke through in sudden, dazzling spears, illuminating patches of the valley floor far below. "This is it," Liam said quietly, unslinging his backpack. His hands were steady as he unzipped the compartment and withdrew the cylinder. It looked absurdly modern, out of place in this primordial setting. Alara felt a lump rise in her throat, unexpected and fierce. She hadn't cried much. The shock had been too profound, the logistics of death too consuming. Now, faced with the physical finality of this act, it welled up. David stood stiffly beside her, his jaw working. "He always said he wanted to be part of the wind here," Liam said, his voice thick. "After that first hike we did, remember, Mom? The one where we got caught in the hailstorm and he laughed the whole way down." Alara remembered. Alistair's laugh, a booming, joyful sound that seemed to defy the weather itself. "I remember." Liam unscrewed the cap. A finer, gray ash was visible within, mixed with tiny white fragments of bone. The final, irreducible facts of a man. "Should we say something?" Chloe asked, linking her arm through Liam's. David cleared his throat. "Ubi solitudinem faciant, pacem appellant," he murmured. When Alara looked at him, he translated softly. "They make a desert and call it peace." Tacitus. Not appropriate, really. Just what came to mind. It was an odd thing to say morbid. Alara felt a prickle of unease. "How about just goodbye?" Liam said, a slight edge in his voice. He stepped closer to the rail, holding the cylinder over the abyss. "Wait," Alara said. The word was out before she could think. They all looked at her. Let me take a picture. For after. It's so beautiful now." She fumbled for her phone. An instinct to capture the moment. To hold on to this terrible, beautiful ritual. The light was stunning, the clouds rolling back like a theater curtain. "Here, Mum, let me," Liam said, turning from the rail. "No, it's fine. I'll just get you 3 with the view behind." She moved to the rail, leaning slightly against it to frame the shot. Chloe and Liam stood together, arms around each other. David was a step apart, a solitary, dark figure. Alara focused the camera. In the small screen, she saw Chloe's smile, bright but fixed. Saw Liam's arm tighten around his wife's shoulders. Saw David, not looking at the camera, but at Liam, his expression unreadable. "Okay, smile," Alara said softly. She never took the picture. The pressure came from directly behind her. A firm, two-handed push, planted precisely in the small of her back. It wasn't a stumble, not a slip. It was deliberate, forceful, and utterly shocking. A gasp was torn from her, more surprise than fear at first. The phone flew from her hand, a tiny silver bird arcing into the void. The world tilted violently. The safety rail, the fixed point of security, became a horizontal bar she was suddenly over. She flailed, momentum carrying her forward, and her shoulder crashed into David, who had been standing just to her left. His eyes, wide with identical shock, met hers for a fractured second. He'd been turning, perhaps reacting to a sound, a movement. Her impact knocked him off balance. They became a tangled unit of confusion and falling. They did not plummet straight down. The lip lived up to its name. They fell maybe 10 feet before hitting the steep, debris-choked chute that slanted away from the cliff face, a natural gutter of shattered rock and loose scree. Then the world became a roaring, battering chaos. Alara lost all orientation. Sky, rock, heather spun in a dizzying blur. She tried to curl into a ball, an ancient instinct, but the slope was too steep, the material too unstable. She was a stone in a landslide, bouncing, rolling, limbs scraping and catching. A jarring impact drove the air from her lungs. A searing pain bloomed across her ribs. Something sharp tore at her scalp. She tasted dirt and blood. It seemed to last forever. In reality, it was perhaps -1 seconds of utter helplessness before the slope began to shallow. Her momentum slowed as she plowed through a thicket of tough, springy heather. She came to a final, jarring stop against a granite boulder, half buried in a drift of pebbles and dirt. Silence. It was profound. The only sounds were the distant, ever-present wind above and a closer trickle of water. The pain arrived then, a symphony of it. Her left side was a solid wall of agony, each breath a sharp, stabbing reminder. Her head throbbed with a deep, sickening rhythm. Warm blood traced a path from her hairline down her temple, pooling in the hollow of her ear. She couldn't move. Shock held her as tightly as the earth. She stared up at a narrow ribbon of gray sky, framed by the steep walls of the chute they descended. They were in a shallow gully, a secret, wounded place hidden from the world above. A groan, close by. David. Memory crashed back. The push. The fall. Liam and Chloe. Panic, hot and acrid, rose in her throat. She tried to turn her head, and a wave of nausea nearly overwhelmed her. Through a haze of pain, she saw him. He was lying a few yards further down the gully, his body at an unnatural angle. One leg was bent grotesquely, a stark, white protrusion of bone visible through the torn fabric of his walking trousers. Blood soaked the material around it, a shocking, vibrant red against the gray stone. "David," she croaked. Her voice was a stranger's. He didn't respond. His eyes were closed, his face pale as parchment beneath the grime and scratches. Then, from far above, voices. "Mom, David." "Oh God, no." "Liam." His voice was high with panic, shredded with what sounded like genuine, devastating grief. It echoed down the stone walls. Chloe was sobbing, great, wrenching gulps of sound. "They're gone. Liam, they're gone. Oh my God, oh my God." Alara's mind, trained by a lifetime of archival work to seek order, scrambled to process. An accident. A terrible, tragic accident. She'd slipped. She'd taken David with her. Her heart clenched with a guilt so profound it momentarily eclipsed the physical pain. She opened her mouth to call out, to let them know they were alive, that they needed help. Alara. David's voice. A raw, guttural whisper, barely audible over Chloe's weeping. She turned her head again, more slowly this time. His eyes were open now, slits of intense focus. He was looking directly at her. His face was a mask of agony, but his gaze was terrifyingly clear. "Don't move," he breathed, each word costing him. "Don't make a sound." He swallowed, a visible effort. "Pretend to be dead." The words made no sense. Yet the command in them, the sheer, desperate urgency, froze the cry in her throat. A coldness seeped into her, colder than the rock beneath her, colder than the trickling blood. It was the chill of a truth her conscious mind had not yet admitted, but her body, her primal self, recognized. She obeyed. She let her body go limp, let her head loll to the side, eyes half closed, watching David through her lash. She regulated her breathing, making it shallow, imperceptible from a distance. Above, the performance of tragedy continued. The rail. It must have given way. Liam cried, his voice breaking. "I saw her lean. Oh Christ. We have to get down there." Chloe sobbed. "It's a death trap. Look at it. We need help. We need the mountain rescue." A pause, filled with ragged breathing. Then, lower, a muttered exchange Alara couldn't catch. The tone was different now. Urgent, but the panic had a new quality. Not just shock, but Negotiation. The sobbing ceased abruptly. The voices dropped to whispers. A few seconds of tense, inaudible argument. Then, footsteps. Not the careful, scuffling steps of people peering over a lethal edge in distress, but deliberate, retreating footsteps, moving away from the lip, back along the path. They grew fainter, then vanished. Silence reclaimed the gully, deeper and more ominous than before. Long minutes passed. A raven croaked somewhere in the high crags. The trickle of water was a maddening counterpoint to the pounding in Alara's head. Finally, David let out a long, shuddering breath. "They're gone," he whispered. "For now." Alara uncoiled, a gasp of pain escaping as she pushed herself up on trembling arms. The world swam. Ignoring it, she crawled towards him. Every movement a fresh explosion in her ribs. The scream cut into her palms. "David, your leg." "Forget the leg," he hissed through clenched teeth. His face was beaded with sweat. "Listen to me. They've gone for help," Alara said, the words tasting like a lie even as she said them. She reached him, her hands hovering over the horrific injury. She had no first aid kit, nothing. She pulled off her scarf, a useless, flimsy thing of merino wool, and pressed it clumsily around the protruding bone. David cried out, a short, sharp sound he stifled instantly. "They're not getting help, Alara." His voice was weak but ferociously clear. "Liam pushed me. I felt his hands. Chloe pushed you. It was no accident." The ground seemed to drop away a second time. She had known. Some part of her had known from the moment of impact, but hearing it stated, boldly, by this broken man, made it a concrete, monstrous reality. Her son, her own child. Why, the word was a plea, a whisper of utter desolation. David's eyes, full of pain and a deeper, more terrifying fear, locked onto hers. It wasn't about the inheritance. Not the money, not the house. He took a ragged breath. "Liam pushed me because he knows. Chloe pushed you because you were with me. They think we both know." "Know what, David? For God's sake, know what?" He closed his eyes for a second, gathering strength. When he opened them, they held a truth so terrible it seemed to leach the remaining color from his face. "Alistair didn't die of a heart attack," he said. "He was murdered." Alara recoiled as if struck. "No, the autopsy. The doctor was paid, or mistaken, or part of it." David's words came in a desperate rush now. "And that's not the worst of it, Alara. The man who died, the man we buried." He winced, a spasm of agony seizing him. When it passed, he looked at her with infinite pity. "He wasn't who you thought he was. None of us are. The man you married was an imposter." The world narrowed to a tunnel, with David's pain-etched face at the end. The sounds of the mountain faded. The throbbing in her head became a distant hum. "Our real brother," David whispered, the confession tearing from him. "Our real Alistair. Disappeared 35 years ago. After a fight with our father, vanished. A year later, a man came back claiming to be him, claiming amnesia. We all accepted it, wanted to believe it. Father insisted. I always had doubts." Alara's mind was a void, a white noise scream. The memories of her life, 30 years of marriage, of shared beds and jokes and quiet mornings and raising a son flickered, like a corrupted film. The feel of Alistair's hand in hers, the sound of his laughter, the slight hesitation sometimes when asked about his childhood, a reluctance to look at old family photos, a strange, specific knowledge of Wellington, New Zealand, a place he'd supposedly never visited. "An imposter. You're mad," she breathed. "The pain. You're hallucinating." "I wish I were," David gasped. "I found proof. A letter. After Father died. I kept it secret. I was a coward. I didn't know what to do. I think Liam found it. Or found something like it. In Alistair's in his things. And he believes we were part of it. That we conspired to defraud him of his real father, his real heritage." The pieces, jagged and lethal, began to click into a pattern of nightmare. Liam's recent coldness, his obsessive digging into genealogy, the locked metal box from his father's study he'd insisted on taking. After the funeral, the strained silences between him and David. Her son hadn't just pushed them off a cliff, he had judged them, executed them, for a crime against his identity. The betrayal of the fall was now a small, sharp stone in the shadow of this vaster, more crushing avalanche of the past. The man she had loved and mourned was a stranger. Her son was a would-be murderer. Her entire life was a fiction. A raw, soundless sob shook her. She pressed her bloody hands to her face. "Alara," David's voice was fading. "Listen. They'll be back. They'll come down to make sure, or to stage the scene. We can't be here." She looked at him, at the grotesque leg, at his graying face. They were hundreds of feet down a near vertical chute, in a hidden gully, both seriously injured. Above them were two people who wanted them dead. Survival was no longer a matter of waiting for rescue. It was a desperate, probably hopeless, game of hide and seek with their hunters. And the prize was not just their lives, but the truth, a truth more terrible than the fall. The echo of their impact still seemed to vibrate in the cold stone around them, but a new, more profound echo had been unleashed. The echo of a lie 35 years in the making, and it was just beginning to sound. Hook. The last thing Alara felt before the fall was not the mist on her face or the sturdy wood of the safety rail. It was her daughter-in-law's hand, a firm, deliberate press in the small of her back, a touch that held the weight of a secret about to be spilled. As she tumbled into the void, crashing into her brother-in-law, David, she thought that was the worst of it, the betrayal by the people they loved. But when they lay broken on the rocks below, playing dead, David whispered a truth that turned the mountain to ice. The man they'd come to this remote Scottish ridge to mourn, her husband of 30 years, was not only murdered, he was an imposter. And the children who pushed them had just inherited a legacy of lies worth killing for. Now, to survive the wilderness and their hunters, Alara and David must unravel the identity of the stranger she loved and confront a history so dark. The fall was just the beginning of their descent. The gully was a tomb of cold stone and colder revelation. Alara stared at David, the word imposter ricocheting inside her skull, shattering every cherished memory it touched. "You're telling me," she said, her voice unnervingly calm, "that for 30 years, I slept beside, loved, raised a child with a stranger. And you knew." "I suspected," David corrected, a tremor of shame in his voice. "I found a letter from my father to a man named Ewan Matheson, dated a month after Alistair, the real Alistair, disappeared. It discussed terms, a long-term arrangement to preserve the family's standing. It was vague, but it wasn't right. I was 23, Alara. I was scared of my father, scared of the scandal. By the time I found the courage to dig deeper, you and he were married. Liam was on the way. What was I supposed to do? Tear your world apart on a hunch?" "Yes," the word was a whip crack. "You were supposed to tell the truth. And destroy you? Destroy Liam? For a brother I wasn't even sure was alive." He coughed, a wet, painful sound. "I told myself it was a business arrangement gone wrong. That maybe the real Alistair had run off and father hired this Matheson to keep up appearances for the sake of the family trust. I buried it. I became an academic, a historian of other people's lives. The irony is not lost on me." Alara's anger was a hot, fleeting thing, quickly doused by the freezing reality of their situation. The past was a labyrinth. The present was a gully with a broken man. She looked at his leg. The bleeding had slowed, saturated into the wool of her scarf, but the shock was deepening. His skin was clammy. "We need to move you," she said, the archivist in her taking over, compartmentalizing the cataclysm into a series of actionable tasks. Step 1. Stabilize the patient. Step 2. Assess the environment. Step 3. Evacuate. Except there was no evacuation, only descent. You need to go, David said. Alone. Follow the water. He gestured weakly, with his chin towards the trickling sound. It will lead to a burn, then a glen. Find help. I'm not leaving you here for them to find. They won't kill an unconscious man, David said. But his eyes betrayed his doubt. They'll think the fall did it. But you, if they find you alive, we go together. Alara's tone brooked no argument. She surveyed the gully. It was about 20 feet wide, a scar of loose rock and stubborn vegetation between two walls of sheer, water-streaked rock. The only way was down, following the gentle slope of the gully floor. It would be agony for him. Using her good arm, she began scavenging. She found two sturdy, forearm-length branches shed from a stunted rowan tree clinging to the gully wall. With a rock, she smashed off the smaller twigs, creating crude splints. Next, she stripped off her waterproof jacket, then her fleece, leaving her shivering in a thermal base layer. Using a sharp stone, she sawed futilely at the fleece before resorting to tearing it with a strength born of desperation. She created long strips of fabric. This is going to hurt, she warned David. He simply nodded, biting down on a piece of leather strap from his own rucksack, which had been torn from his back in the fall and lay nearby. Setting the broken bone was beyond her. All she could do was immobilize it. She worked with a brutal efficiency, aligning the branches on either side of the gruesome injury and winding the fleece strips around them and his leg, tying knots as tight as she could bear. David's stifled screams were animal things, swallowed by the leather in his teeth. His eyes rolled back in his head once, but he clung to consciousness. When it was done, both of them were slick with sweat despite the cold. Alara shrugged back into her waterproof, its thin insulation a mockery against the deepening chill. Now, she said, panting. How do we move you? The answer came from the detritus of the mountain. She found a section of flat, thick peat, about the size of a door, that had sheared from the gully wall. It was heavy, but it would slide. It would have to be his sled. Getting him onto it was a torment that took nearly half an hour. Every jostle drew a gasp or a whimper. Finally, he lay prone on the peat slab, his splinted leg jutting awkwardly. Alara used the last of the fleece strips to create a crude harness around her chest and shoulders, attaching the ends to the front of the peat. She leaned into the harness. The peat moved an inch, grating on the scree. Her ribs screamed in protest. A black haze crowded the edges of her vision. Leave me, David whispered again, his voice faint. Shut up, David, Alara grunted. You don't get to be a coward twice. She pulled. The peat slab slid, then caught. She adjusted her footing, found a slightly smoother path, and pulled again. It was a snail's pace, a journey of inches measured in stabbing pain and ragged breath. The trickle of water became her guide, a silver thread leading down the gully. The world narrowed to the next foot of ground, the next pull, the next breath that didn't feel like a knife in her side. As they inched along, David, in a voice blurred by pain and exhaustion, began to talk. It was a confession, a story spilled to keep himself awake, to keep the darkness of shock at bay. Our father, Alistair McIntyre Sr., was a man who believed in legacy above all else. He began. The McIntyre name, the estate, the money. It was all built on something dirty, rumors, whispers about the original fortune, made in the colonies. He never spoke of it, but it haunted him, made him ruthless. Alistair, my real brother, was the golden child. Bold, brilliant, charismatic. But he had a conscience. At 25, he'd been digging. He confronted father. I heard the shouting from the library. Something about blood, money, and cleansing the ledger. Alistair stormed out. That was the last time I saw him. Alara pulled, listening, her mind weaving his words with her own memories. Her husband's, the imposter's, vague stories about a rebellious youth, a period of finding himself abroad. The convenient amnesia.com. A year later, David continued, Ewan Matheson arrived. He looked close enough, older, harder. The same build, similar coloring. He had Alistair's watch, his signet ring. He told a story of a head injury, fragments of memory returning. Father embraced him immediately. Too immediately. Mother. I think she knew. But she was ill, and she wanted her son back. I asked him a question only. Alistair would know the answer. To the name of the pony he had. When we were boys. He got it wrong. Called it Thistle instead of Bramble. When I pressed him. Later, in private, he just looked at me. Not with guilt, but with a terrible, empty sadness. He said, sometimes, David, a new story is kinder than the old one. For everyone. I never asked again. Alara stopped pulling, her strength spent for a moment. She leaned against the cold rock, breathing hard. He loved Liam, she said, the words aching. That wasn't an act. I'd swear it. I believe he did, David said softly. I think you and Matheson, whoever he was, found something real with you. A life. A son. Perhaps he came to love the fiction more than his own truth. That's what makes it so grotesque. Alara finished. A sound froze them both. Not the wind. Not water. A dislodged stone, clattering down the rock face high above them. They looked up, silhouetted against the strip of gray sky at the top of the gully. A figure peered over. The distance was too great to see features, but the cerise color of the waterproof was unmistakable. Chloe. She was looking down, scanning. From her vantage, Alara and David would be little more than shadows. Perhaps a strange, dark shape on the gully floor. Alara pressed herself against the wall, willing herself to be stone. David lay motionless on the peat. For an eternity of seconds, the figure was still. Then, it withdrew. Alara didn't breathe until her lungs burned. They're checking. They'll find a way down, David said, dread in his voice. Or they'll find a path to cut us off below. We have to move faster. But faster was impossible. Every muscle trembled with fatigue. A deep, grinding ache had settled in her ribs. The harness chafed her raw skin. Yet, the sight of that cerise speck ignited a new fire, pure, survivalist fear. She leaned back into the harness. The peak groaned forward. The gully began to widen, the slope to lessen. The trickle of water joined other trickles, becoming a proper stream that cut a shallow channel through the floor. The sound of it covered their labored progress. After another hour of brutal effort, the gully opened abruptly. It spilled them out onto a gentler slope of heather and tussock grass. At the head of a wider valley, a proper mountain burn gurgled a few yards away. They were exposed. We need cover, Alara gasped, her vision spotting. She scanned the valley. To the east, the ground rose again towards another rocky ridge. To the west, it fell more steeply towards the distant glimmer of a loch. And there, nestled in a fold of land beside the burn, half hidden by a stand of wine-scoured pines, was a shape too regular to be natural. A bothy. A small, stone-built shelter for shepherds or climbers. Its roof was intact, slate from the look of it. A thin wisp of peat smoke, almost indistinguishable from the mist, curled from a metal chimney pipe. There, David said, hope lending strength to his voice. The old Glis bothy. It's on the map. Should be unlocked. It was 100 yards away. It might as well have been 100 miles. But it was shelter. It was potential safety. One more pull, Alara whispered to herself, a mantra. One more. She gathered the last dregs of her strength, every ounce of willpower forged in the fire of betrayal. She fixed her eyes on the dark rectangle of the bothy door and leaned into the harness. She did not see the two figures picking their way down a steep deer path on the far side of the valley, their movements swift and purposeful. She did not see Liam pause, raise a small pair of binoculars to his eyes, and sweep the landscape below. She only pulled towards the shelter, dragging the shattered past behind her on a slab of peat, while the future, in the form of her son, closed in silently from the flank. The hunt was on, and the echoes in the stone were growing louder, carrying not just the memory of their fall, but the approaching footsteps of their hunters. The final yards to the bothy were a blur of white paint and iron wool. Alara's world had narrowed to the rasp of the peat slab over grass, the burn of her muscles, and the dark rectangle of the door. When the slab finally bumped against the bothy's worn stone step, her legs buckled. She collapsed against the heavy wooden door, which swung inward with a groan of protest. The interior was a cave of shadows and blessed stillness. A single room, about 12 feet square. A stone fireplace held the embers of a recent peat fire, the source of the smoke. A rough wooden table, 2 stools. A shelf with a few tins of food and a battered kettle. Against the far wall was a simple wooden bunk bed with thin, musty mattresses. It smelled of damp wool, wood smoke, and time. "Alara," David whispered urgently from the sled. "Inside. Now." She forced herself up, grabbing him under the arms. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she hauled him backwards over the threshold, his splinted leg dragging. She kicked the door shut, plunging them into near darkness save for the orange glow of the embers. She didn't bolt it, there was no bolt, but she shoved the heavy table against it. Only then did she allow herself to crumple to the earth floor, her back against the stone wall, gasping like a landed fish. The adrenaline that had carried her for miles drained away, leaving a void filled with throbbing, all-consuming pain. Her ribs were a cage of fire. Her head pulsed where the gash had clotted. Her hands were raw and bloody. For minutes, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the pop of the peat embers. David broke the silence, his voice thin but clear. "Check the shelf. There might be a first aid kit. Or whiskey, preferably both." Alara pushed herself up. On a shelf, among the rusty tins of beans and corned beef, she found a dusty metal tin with a red cross. Inside was ancient gauze, yellowing bandages, a small bottle of iodine, and a half-full flask of Talisker single malt. She took a burning swig from the flask, the heat spreading through her core, then brought it to David. He drank greedily. She worked methodically, the archivist now turned field surgeon. She cleaned her head wound with iodine, hissing at the sting, and bandaged it. She couldn't do much for her ribs but bound them tightly with a long bandage, which offered a small measure of support. Then she turned to David's leg. In the better light, it looked even worse. The bone was not just broken, it was splintered. Infection was a death sentence. "This needs a hospital," she said, her voice hollow. "We need to survive the night first," David replied. "Clean it, pack it, do what you can," using boiled water from a rain barrel outside the door. She did as he said, her hands surprisingly steady. "Why is there a fire?" Alara asked suddenly, the question piercing her fatigue. "Someone was here. Hill walkers. They come and go. The etiquette is to leave fuel for the next person." David nodded to a stack of dried peat, bricks in the corner. "It's a blessing. The smoke will blend with the mist, but it's also a risk. If Liam and Chloe know these hills." As if summoned by his name, a sound came from outside, not the wind. A voice, distant but carrying on the cold air. "Mom." Liam's voice, closer than she'd imagined. It wasn't a scream of panic now. It was a call. Deliberate, searching. "David, can you hear me?" Alara's blood turned to ice. She met David's eyes. They both froze. "We're trying to find a way down to you." The voice was nearer now, maybe a few hundred yards up the valley. "Just shout if you can hear us." It was a trap, a spider's web of sound. They were trying to lure a response, to pinpoint their location. Chloe's voice joined in, higher, tinged with what still sounded like convincing distress. "Please, we just want to help." Alara pressed her back against the cold stone wall, as if she could merge with it. David held a finger to his lips. The bothy, which had felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a trap of its own obvious destination. They heard footsteps crunching on gravel, coming closer. Then, the sound stopped just outside. A shadow passed by the single, small, grimy window. Alara's hand closed around the only weapon she could see, the heavy iron poker from the fireplace. The door handle rattled. The table she'd shoved against it held firm. Doors stuck, Liam's voice muttered, right outside. Probably swelled in the damp. Should we force it? Chloe asked. A pause. Alara could picture him weighing it. Forcing the door of a bothy was against every hill-walking code. It would be an admission of intent. No, Liam said finally, his voice tight. If they were in there, they'd have answered. Or we'd see a light. They must be further down the glen. Or, they didn't make it this far. His words were a cold, clinical assessment. There was no grief in them now. Only calculation. The footsteps receded. Alara didn't move for a full 10 minutes. Until the silence was absolute once more. They're not giving up, David whispered. They've moved from panic to a search pattern. They'll quarter this valley. We can't stay here, Alara said. We can't move me again, David replied, stating the brutal fact. Not like that. You have to go. At first light, follow the burn to Loch Knockreach. There's an estate track there. A chance of a ranger, a fisherman, and leave you for them to find. I have a plan, David said. And for the first time, a grim, scholarly cunning lit his eyes. But I need you to bring back help, and I need you to know the rest of the story first, in case I'm not here to tell it. The night closed in around them, a thick blanket of Highland dark. Alara fed the fire with a single peat brick for warmth, its smoke thin and blending with the mist. Huddled in musty wool blankets from the bunk, they kept their voices to the barest whispers. And David, his pain held at bay by shock and whiskey, told her the rest. After the imposter Ewan came back, life settled into a strange normalcy, David began, his eyes reflecting the low firelight. Father became more reclusive, pouring himself into the family's charitable trust, the McIntyre Foundation. It was his penance and his fortress. Alara remembered. The foundation was Alistair's life's work in his later years. Disaster relief, medical aid in developing nations. It was his pride. I focused on my own life, David continued. But I watched Ewan. He was diligent. He learned the family history, the business. He was a quick study. But he had aversions. He wouldn't go near Father's old study after he died. He avoided conversations about the family's early investments. And then, about 15 years ago, he changed the foundation's focus, pivoted hard from general aid to a very specific niche, supplying proprietary data analysis software and secure communications hardware to the same aid organizations. A cold thread of understanding pulled taut in Alara's mind. His background. You never knew what he did before. No, and neither did you. Various things abroad, he'd say. I started looking into the foundation's partners, shell companies, a labyrinthine network. The hardware they supplied was cheap, effective, and ubiquitous in conflict zones and unstable regions, praised for its resilience. What are you saying? I'm saying the foundation wasn't just giving aid, Alara. It was planting a network, a listening network. Every satellite modem, every ruggedized tablet in a refugee camp or field hospital supplied by the McIntyre Foundation had a backdoor. It was harvesting data intelligence on movements, supply lines, local politics, and selling it. The revelation landed in the silent bothy like a physical blow. The charitable legacy, her husband's proudest achievement, was a front, a sophisticated, global spy operation. Who was buying? Alara asked, her voice barely audible. Private military contractors, mineral extraction conglomerates, governments with questionable human rights records. The blood money my real brother accused Father of wasn't just historical. It was ongoing. Father had started it, perhaps as a way to leverage old colonial contacts for information. Ewan modernized it, monetized it. He had the skills for it. And the real Alistair, what happened to him? David's face contorted in grief. I think he found out. I think he threatened to expose it. And Father, or someone Father hired, made him disappear. Ewan Matheson wasn't just a random stand-in. I think he was part of the security apparatus, hired first to deal with the Alistair problem, then to become him and manage the asset he'd inadvertently threatened. A perfect, permanent solution. The man she loved had not just lived a lie. He had been a lie with a gun, a custodian of a monstrous secret. His kindness to Liam, his love for her, were they the man, or part of the cover? The question was a wound that made her physical injuries seem trivial. Liam found out, Alara stated. He must have. After Ewan died, Liam would have had access to everything. The lockbox wasn't just about a swapped identity. It was the keys to the kingdom. The ledgers, the contacts, the truth about the Foundation. He saw the fortune he inherited wasn't just wealth, it was a vast criminal enterprise. And he believed we, the adults who raised him, were the architects. In his eyes, we were monsters. And monsters need to be slain. The logic was horrifyingly complete. Liam wasn't just a greedy son. He was a furious, betrayed idealist. He had tried to wipe the slate clean, to bury the guilty and claim the tainted legacy for himself, perhaps to destroy it from within. Chloe, loyal or complicit or equally horrified, had joined him. A new sound intruded, not footsteps, but the electronic chirp of a satellite phone, muffled but close. Then Liam's voice again, outside but further away, speaking low and urgently. Confirmed, they're not in the bothy. Yes, we're proceeding down the East Ridge. The weather's closing in tomorrow, that should help. No, we'll handle it. It has to look natural. Just have the extraction ready at Locknock Creech by dusk tomorrow. The call ended. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the voices. They weren't just two kids in over their heads. They had outside help, an extraction plan. This was organized. Dawn was a slow, gray seep into the sky. Alara knew what she had to do. David's plan was simple and desperate. She would leave, making a visible trail away from the bothy. Then double back and hide. He would stay as bait. When they come, he said, handing her the iron poker and the flask, they'll be focused on me. You'll have one chance. Don't hesitate. The weight of the poker was dreadful in her hand. David, go, Alara, find the truth, for all of us. With a last, agonized look, she slipped out of the bothy just as the first light touched the peaks, and vanished into the mist. Alara didn't go far. She followed David's instructions, scuffing her boots on the soft ground leading east, away from the lock, snapping a few branches. Then she circled back through the stream to hide her scent and tracks, and concealed herself in a dense thicket of juniper and rock, 50 yards from the bothy, with a clear view of the door. The wait was an eternity. The cold gnawed through her clothes. Her body stiffened. She watched the bothy door, a silent sentinel. It was mid-morning when they came. Liam and Chloe moved with a quiet, grim purpose. Liam carried a climber's rope coiled over his shoulder. Chloe had a large rock in her hands, her face set in a mask of determined misery. They didn't bother calling out this time. Liam tested the door, found it still resisted, and put his shoulder to it. The table scraped inward. They entered. Alara's heart hammered against her broken ribs. She gripped the poker, her palms slicked. From inside, she heard David's voice, clear and defiant. You're too late, Liam. She's gone for help. The truth is gone with her. Liam's reply was a cold snarl. What truth? The truth that you and she conspired with a fraud to steal my father's life, to make me a bastard in my own inheritance. Your father loved you, David's voice was fierce. The man who raised you. That is the truth. The rest is a poison tree. You don't want its fruit. It's my tree. Liam shouted, the sound raw and pained. And I will burn it to the ground, starting with the people who watered it. There was a scuffle, a cry of pain from David, Chloe's voice, pleading, Liam, just make it quick. Alara could wait no longer. She burst from the thicket, the poker raised, just as Liam emerged from the bothy dragging David by the collar. David's face was bloody, his eyes met Alara's not with surprise, but with a fierce, final signal. Now. Liam saw her. His eyes widened in shock, then hardened into something worse, a bitter, resigned fury. "You were supposed to be gone." "I am your mother," Alara said, her voice trembling but her arms steady, the poker pointed at him. "You're the wife of the man who killed my father," he roared. In that second of his distraction, David acted. With a guttural cry, he threw his weight sideways, his good leg kicking out at Liam's knee. Liam stumbled, his grip loosening. Alara charged, not at Liam, but at Chloe, who stood frozen, the rock still in her hands. She didn't swing the poker. She pointed it at Chloe's face. "Drop it." Chloe stared, her defiance crumbling into sheer terror. The rock thudded to the ground. Liam recovered, shoving David aside and turning on Alara, but the dynamic had shifted. The plan was broken. "It's over, Liam," Alara said, tears streaming down her dirty face. "The man who raised you was Ewan Matheson. He worked for your grandfather's criminal enterprise. He was a liar and a spy, and he loved you more than anything in this world. Both things are true. You can choose which one to remember, but you cannot kill us for it." Liam stood panting, his fists clenched, a war raging on his face. The righteous murderer was gone, leaving a lost, furious boy. It was the sound of a distant engine that broke the stalemate. A Land Rover, bouncing along the estate track by the lock, still miles off but coming. The promised extraction. Or something else. "The Ranger," David gasped from the ground. "Weekly check." Panic flashed in Liam's eyes. He looked from Alara to Chloe to the approaching vehicle. The calculus of murder changed with witnesses. With a sound of sheer anguish, he turned and ran, not towards the lock, but back up into the high. With a sound of sheer anguish, he turned and ran, not towards the lock, but back up into the high crags, towards the ridge. Chloe stared after him, then at Alara, her face a ruin of guilt and fear, before she turned and fled in the opposite direction, down towards the trees. Alara didn't give chase. She let the poker fall and sank to her knees beside David. The Land Rover reached them 20 minutes later. It wasn't a ranger, but a gamekeeper from a neighboring estate, an old, grizzled man named Hamish. He took one look at them, at David's leg, and got on his radio. As they waited for the mountain rescue helicopter, its thump 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 growing in the sky, David clutched Alara's hand. "The ruin," he whispered. "On the map. Krieg and Tishanike. The Fox's Rock. He might have gone there." The real Alistair. Chapter 6. The Echo. 2 days later, Alara stood in the modern, antiseptic quiet of Inverness hospital corridor. David was in surgery, finally getting the pins and plates his leg required. The police had been and gone, taking statements about a tragic hiking accident, a family dispute that led to a separation on the mountain. Liam and Chloe were missing, a search ongoing. Alara had said nothing of pushes or imposters. Not yet. The truth was too large, too dangerous. But she had given the police one piece of information, a location to search for Liam. Krieg on Tishanike. She had gone there herself, with Hamish the gamekeeper. Before the sedation took David, it was a jumble of moss-covered stones, the remains of a prehistoric brock or a later shieling. In a crevice sheltered from the wind, they found it. Not Liam. A time capsule. A rusted tin box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a journal. The handwriting was frantic, elegant, and utterly familiar. It was the hand she knew as her husband's, but younger, angrier. The journal of Alistair McIntyre, the true one. The final entries were a damning chronicle of his discovery of the family's information. Brokerage, the last page, dated the day he vanished, read, "Confronted father today. He didn't deny it. Called it the price of legacy. I said I would go to the authorities. He smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. He said, 'You're my legacy, boy. You will learn, or you will be replaced. I am not safe. If you are reading this, I am dead. Or I have become someone else. Burn it all down. Beneath the journal was a faded photograph of a young, smiling Alistair and a modern GPS coordinate written on a scrap of paper in a different hand. Ewan's hand. The coordinates led to a data storage facility in Geneva. The real Alistair had not been replaced. He had been murdered, and Ewan Matheson, his replacement, had kept the evidence, a secret insurance policy and a ghost of the man he'd erased. Epilogue. 1 month later. The press called it a terrible tragedy. A prominent family torn apart by grief after a patriarch's death, leading to a fatal misadventure in the mountains. Liam and Chloe were presumed lost, swallowed by the unforgiving hills. The McIntyre Foundation was quietly dissolved by its remaining trustee, Elara McIntyre, citing insurmountable operational challenges. Its assets were liquidated and donated anonymously to a dozen other reputable aid organizations. In a secure facility in Switzerland, a data core was physically destroyed. Elara sat in the quiet garden of the convalescent home where David was recovering. His leg would always give him a limp, a permanent echo of the fall. The silence between them was no longer charged with secrets, but with a shared, heavy knowledge. "He loved you, you know," David said softly, watching a robin hop on the lawn. Ewan. In his final years, he was trying to dismantle the network. Slowly, carefully. "I found traces." He was trying to protect you. "And Liam." "I know," Elara said. And she did. She had found her own cache of letters in a safe deposit box, addressed to her, to be opened upon his death. They contained not love poems, but instructions, warnings, and a profound, aching apology. "The greatest truth of my life," he had written, "was the love I was not meant to have. For that, I will owe you for all eternity." She had burned the letters. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. It was the same wind that had scoured the Skian Duff Ridge, that had taken the ashes of the man who was both Alistair and Ewan, and the hopes of the son who was both Liam and a stranger. Elara closed her eyes and listened. The loudest echoes were not of the fall, or of lies, or of murder. They were the softer, more persistent echoes of love that had been real even in a fiction, of a conscience that had fought its way to the surface, and of the quiet, resilient courage to face a truth that could never be fully understood, only endured. The stone held the memory of the impact, but the wind carried the story forward, changed, fragmented, but finally cleansed.